Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon in Dubai, as it were. I'm really delighted to welcome you to this EU side event on beyond border adaptation action. And it is my real pleasure to also be joining you with this distinguished panelist representing different regions, different cities from the EU. Now, in terms of context, it's obvious for all of us that not only EU, but the world is experiencing a lot of climate impacts. They are increasing in both intensity and frequency. It's clear that we need to step up our activities in adaptation to complement those that we have been already undertaking in terms of mitigation. And for us to do that in the best possible way and to provide predictability to our citizens, we need clear goals and targets. In that sense, the work that's being done in the negotiations in Dubai to define a joined up adaptation goal is very important. EU missions, which is a specific initiative built to enhance uptake of pioneering practices, scaling them up, and also enhance understanding of the adaptation challenges, is a small contribution to this effort. And I'm happy to join the panelists who represent also signatories to the EU missions. In the EU context, we pursue action following the duty to adapt, which is enshrined in the EU climate law. We also are carrying out a first ever EU climate risk assessment, which will inform the policies and measures that we will be undertaking in the years to come as the climate impacts are expected to intensify. Local action on adaptation is super important. It is pivotal for us to be able to contextualize and localize our activities. EU supports increasing local resilience. The mission on adaptation to climate change is a driver for regional collaboration and cooperation across different regions in the EU. It's our aim to provide better understanding of climate risks, develop clear pathways to enhanced resilience, and indeed test and deploy new solutions in a way that makes it scalable and can really scale up the uptake. Accelerated, if you like. All of this needs to be accompanied by capacity building. That's why we have different platforms available to the decision makers, administrators at local and regional level to help them join a community of practice that can have a clear articulated vision that allows them to pursue ambitious resilience policies. Over 300 regions have already joined as signatories to the EU adaptation mission. And we have a very vibrant community that shares practices and enhances collaboration. The community, like our adaptation efforts, knows no borders. And it's in that context that I am really pleased to now introduce our panelists to you. Firstly, Tanya Ristova, who's the mayor of Gabrovo and the chair of SEDEC committee in the Committee of Regions. SEDEC covers issues of employment, social policies, education, training, sports, and culture. So it's a very diverse portfolio. Tanya has a long experience in dealing with issues of EU budget, and she has a master's degree in English philology and finance. So the finance matters will be very close to your area of expertise. Then we will have Antonio Garcia Gelda, who's the General Director of Capilidad Verde Europe, the European Green Capital in the City Council of Valencia. And Antonio is a professor at the University of Valencia and has a very high experience as a researcher in innovation, R&D, and technology transfer, all key elements of our activities in taking adaptation and resilience to the next level. Then we have Åsa Ågren Wikström, who is the regional councillor in the region of Västerbotten and also a member of the Committee of Regions. She is also a member of County Council of the region of Västerbotten and a committee of EU affairs in the Swedish Association of Local Authorities and Regions, and also has indeed extensive experience in working in the Swedish context and specifically dealing with some of the EU affairs which are pertinent to our conversation today. And last but certainly not least, we have Joana Balsameo, who's the councillor in Cascais and a member of the Committee of Regions for Portugal. Joana is trained in international relations and environmental change and management, and she's currently serving as an elected member of the executive of Cascais Council, responsible for environmental policies and active citizen processes. I'm really keen to hear what active citizen processes mean and how they can be used to accelerate our work and amplify the impact of what we're doing. So let me start by putting my first question to Tanya. We would like to hear from you about the role of cities in climate adaptation, and in particular, the need for multi-level governance. What are the challenges and opportunities for Gabrovo in collaborating with regional, national, and European level, and eventually beyond EU borders when dealing with authorities specifically on climate adaptation? So the vertical integration of our governance functions. Over to you, Tanya.
Thank you very much, Elina. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this panel and to discuss issues very relevant to local and regional authorities and directly related to our sustainable development. And I would also like to tell you that it is a big honor to be the mayor of Gabrovo municipality, which actually is very active in recent years in terms of green policies. We had the pleasure to be one of the cities that was awarded European Green Leaf for 2021. And then in 2022, we joined the mission for climate neutral cities, which is something that is showing our goals, and in collaboration with different partners locally and on national and European levels, we are trying to be efficient and active in the green transition, which of course poses not only opportunities but many different challenges. But this initiative that is happening today is really on a very important moment, and it is the moment when our EU negotiators are working very hard to secure the adoption of the framework for the global goal of adaptation, which is happening just now during the COP28 in Dubai, with the aim to ensure successful outcomes of the first global stocktake of the Paris Agreement. Obviously, it was declared that this year we hit the record for hot temperatures, which means that we are not just having challenges, we are with the obligation to address and to use some mitigation, adaptations, and a complex of different measures in our cities and in our regions in order to address these problems, and also to provide opportunities our cities and regions to be the platform where different initiatives could be implemented, something which is happening also in my city, because we are really very active in working in many different fields related to energy efficiency, to waste management, clean air, and also trying to protect our biodiversity, and to work with businesses so that they will be also in a good situation to pass through these green transitions. And it is very good chance to have the new initiatives like the EU missions, and especially the mission on adaptation, because it is really very important and it works as a catalyst for transformation across all European communities. And one of the things that is very useful when it comes to communities is the fact that among the European cities and regions, we have very good opportunities to network, to collaborate, and to work by learning from our experiences. And of course, I would like also to focus on some of the challenges that are still present before us, and especially in my country as well, which is very, how to say, centralized, and this sometimes determines the need for a very strong connection between the local, regional, and the national level, especially in such policies that demand very systemic and very comprehensive approach. And here I would like to underline something that will be very often repeated, that we need effective multi-level governance in order to facilitate the integration of the adaptation into all our policies at all levels of governance. And here the national governments, especially my government, should be much more active in order to involve local and regional authorities in the development and implementation of national adaptation plan. As I have mentioned, my city, Gabrovo, is active in this field for many years. Since 2013, we are a member of the Covenant of Mayors. We have developed sustainable energy plan. Now we have our sustainable energy and climate action plan, and through this we will try to reach climate neutrality by 2030, which is something that we cannot do alone without the support of the national authorities. Secondly, I would like also to mention something that is the need for more financial, technological, and technical support. We on local and regional level need to be supported, need to be helped by expertise that will allow us to prepare and to implement the best possible projects that will have direct impact on our citizens, and will be able also to increase our capacity. And something that probably will be very interesting to witness how will develop in different countries, how this new goals will become part from our governance models, because it is now impossible to govern without having in mind the green and digital transition. And two more aspects that I would like to mention. We need to develop a comprehensive understanding of the climate and the disaster risk. And here we need to be more active and to create more awareness with our citizens, with our businesses, and also with the academia. And mentioning academia, I would like to say that it is very important to have access to more data and to develop our policies and our decisions in accordance with evidence-based components, which will really provide us with the opportunity to create more confidence and to be more close with all important partners in this very important endeavor. And I will finish by mentioning that in terms of creating opportunities for different partnership, for learning very useful things, and for getting inspiration, we have that mission portal, which is really something very useful. And I hope that The missions will prove that having cities and regions on board will provide the opportunity this goals to be much more easier and much more successfully implemented on the ground, which is something that is very important because policies that are drafted on a high level are really tested on the basic level. And here I think I would like to stop and get the opportunity for other speakers to join. Thank you.
Thanks, Tanya. Those are excellent points about effective multi-level governance and the dire need that we also see in our work in the Commission for more financial and technical assistance, advisory services, and help in identifying pipelines for projects. There is a disconnect, and let's reflect maybe on that later on in the panel, but I think you put your finger on many very pertinent points which apply in Europe, but not only in Europe. I think it's something that we all have to deal with when deploying ambitious policies at different levels of administration. Next, let me turn to Antonio. We talked about plans and clarity of purpose and direction. Could you elaborate a little bit on the regional adaptation plan and the national climate change adaptation plan, how those interplay, and also what are the needs of Valencia region and other Spanish regions in that respect, and what constitute the key elements of effective collaboration in your view? Over to you, Antonio. Thank you. You need to unmute yourself.
Yes, thanks. Good morning from Valencia, Spain, and thanks to the organization and to you and the colleagues at the table for giving me the opportunity to join you. And between all of us here from Dubai, from the network, to continue helping to improve our work. I think this is very important, and our effort have to follow during all the next years, and these events are so important. Our regional action plan in December of 2022, we approved the law on climate change and the ecological transition of the Valencian community. This is the main instrument for the development of this law in Valencia integrated energy and climate plan, which is currently being processed for approval. The reason for joining an energy and climate plan is that from our point of view, climate change and its consequences must be addressed from a global perspective. On the one hand, increase mitigation policies to reach the neutrality of the greenhouse emissions. And on the other hand, adapting our territory, making it more resilient to the consequences of the climate change and what we are already suffering through the Europe, floods, fires, and our heat waves that we suffer. This plan is aligned with the National Climate Change Plan, and I would like to highlight that this plan considers its actions, prioritizing additional measures in economic and social areas that presents the greater vulnerability to climate change, such as water resources, critical infrastructure, tourism, ecosystems, and agricultural areas. For the implementation of the climate change adaptation policies, we are fully aligned with the different existing instruments at different levels of governments, local, state, and European. The national level, we collaborate with the Spanish Climate Change Office or the Center for the Industrial Technological Development. So we last participate in different forums and working groups with other Spanish regions. At the European level, we are actively participating in the EU Adaptation mission. We are signatories of the mission since June from 2022 as a region, as a city of Valencia, and we work with the different instruments. With all these actions, we want to activate our adoption policies and create synergies with the different actors involved through concrete and local actions. We want to dynamize this through the different financing and assistance instruments, such as those referred by the European institutions or other institutions, including the tools. As an example of this, it's remarkable the participation in Two Horizons new projects. And I think one of the aims to address is in an innovation way to reduce the risk of forest fires is very important in our daily. The main need that we have detected for the effective implementation of our policies is to influence the multi-actor governments and to bring to the municipal level concrete actions to address risks on a regional scale. I think this is very important for us and for our municipalities. The fight against the effects of climate change is almost always implemented through local policies and competencies. And I think for this moment, it's the first thing that I have to say to the others to follow our conversation.
Thanks, Antonio. And you bring in very important dimensions. You know, it's not just about the damages, it's not just about the economy, but the social dimension is really important in all of this. We talk about the transition that can leave no one behind. And of course, when we're talking about adaptation, dealing with the impacts of climate change, it's often the most vulnerable that have the hardest consequences to deal with and the least means to address those. So it's not only about the collaboration and networks, but addressing the whole of the economy, the complexity of the challenges, and talking about it in the right kind of metrics and terms, which include the social aspects. Now, moving on from a city in the Mediterranean region to a region in the Arctic, I would like to hear from Åsa about her work within a region of high mountains and forests, and how you, in your daily work, address the cross-regional cooperation. What are the main challenges and opportunities for fostering cross-regional cooperation in a somewhat scarcely populated Nordic country? And are there lessons that we can learn from your northern context to a broader international context? And would you have some examples of already connecting with regions or local authorities around the world? Åsa.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for having me. Just stating the obvious, as already said, and you mentioned it earlier, Elina, climate issues knows no border. So if one region or country is doing all right and the other isn't, we won't get good results. Both in my city of Umeå and my region Västerbotten in the north of Sweden, we have several cross-border and cross-region collaborations, simply because we have a long tradition of finding friends to work with, since we are a relatively sparsely populated region with vast distances. Although we in Umeå municipality has more than 132,000 inhabitants, we also have neighboring municipalities that are small and count some 2,300 inhabitants. So please let me mention a couple of our many international cooperation. Our closest cross-border cooperation since more than 50 years is between Umeå in Sweden and Vasa in Finland. We work together in many areas, and we have built the world's most environmentally friendly ferry as a concrete example of our close cooperation for reducing the carbon dioxide emissions, and are aiming to create a climate-neutral transport corridor by sea between our two cities. We are also supporting electric aviation in our region and working with projects for greening energy, such as the Nordic Battery Belt. From both my municipality, Umeå, and Center for Rural Medicine in the region of Västerbotten, we are working in a project that will establish a partnership with Kenyan counties in the Lake Victoria Basin area in Africa. The main goal of the project is to produce an agreement that includes a framework on and priorities for what the counties need to and can do to jointly, effectively, and democratically promote health and resilience, taking the climate crisis and man-made environmental degradation into account. All politics is local, meaning that we see that the regions are crucial for the realization of policies, as everything happens in a local place, in a region or a territory. Urban wastewater can play an important role in making Europe a frontrunner towards zero pollution. We all want clean water, healthy lakes and seas, both for us now and for future generations. In the north of Sweden, we have been working with this for a very long time and have come a long way with water quality, wastewater, and waste in a circular economy. But of course, this issue is important for all, not only for Europe. So in Umeå, our water, wastewater, and waste company, Vaken, is working in a partnership program together with Water Aid and the municipality of Godavari in Nepal. The 3-year program is led by UN Habitat Global Water and funded by the European Commission. Through knowledge exchange and mentorship, the partnership will strengthen Godavari's work with sustainable water, sanitation, and waste management. It aims at building knowledge in the local organization responsible for water, sewage, and waste to improve the municipality's ability to plan and budget and ensure that the investments reach the most vulnerable. And finally, from my point of view, I think successful regional development requires more place-based policies, more cross-sectorial coordination, and enhanced multi-level governance to enable growth and promote sustainable development. Thank you.
Thanks, Åsa. And I think there's already some reoccurring themes coming up during our panel, such as the multi-level governance, effective coordination, and the cross-sectoral advancement, because it is indeed true that resilience, climate impact preparedness, and adaptation are issues that don't just relate to environment matters, don't just relate to nature protection, but increasingly affect things such as infrastructure, energy supply security, and transport networks. So there is a lot of scope for further work and really scaling up efforts in the different sector departments that deal with specific policies. So thank you for that. I would now like to move on to Joanna. Cascais is a coastal municipality bordered by both Atlantic Sea and the UNESCO protected Sintra mountain range. So it's a very specific setting again. But I'd like to hear from you, not just about the local and regional context, but also in specific about the importance of citizen engagement. We already heard in your introduction that this has been an area that you've been looking at in depth. How important is the citizens' engagement in pursuing successful policies? Over to you.
Thank you, Elina, and good afternoon, everyone. Yes, so Cascais is a 200,000 person population just outside Lisbon, and I think we're famous participation-wise because of our participatory budgets. It's a very large share of our investment budget is co-decided with the citizens. But I will zoom into our adaptation plan first. It's about 7 years old, and there's 82 measures associated with it, and I'm happy to say that about 65% of them have been executed. So the aim is 2030, and all of these measures are science-based, and that's really important for what I will explain after. And so we worked with academia, and with them it was possible to look at scenarios and then define different measures, how much they would cost, etc. Now, looking at participation, there's different levels of participation, different types of participation, everything ranging from consultation to cooperating, co-planning, co-deciding, all the way up to co-management. And we tried a bit of everything with our action plan. But the very first level of participation was, of course, in-house. Because if you look back 7 years ago, everything related to the literacy of adaptation, climate action was not so common within civil servants. So there was a lot of capacity building that was necessary. And so all the action plan was built sort of inside out, working with different sectorial colleagues, urban planners to public works, communication departments. And yeah, at the beginning, they did not see why they were convened to this meeting and to be involved in the effort. But of course, then it made a lot of sense. And it's about sharing the ownership, sharing the burden as well, but also sharing whatever all the gains that come from it. And so after having a solid buy-in from within, we can start executing outwards, which is what happens. And I'll just give you a few examples of how participation is induced. So, for example, in the national park that Elina has mentioned, it covers about a third of the territory, and we are trying very hard to regenerate it. Why? Because most of the land cover is monospecies, and we're talking about invasive species, so acacia eucalyptus, very much fire prone, does nothing for biodiversity. But only a part of this national park is public. A large chunk is privately owned. So we are working, co-planning with private landowners in order to regenerate by converting their plots of land. And this means we have to explain, why what they have is not good for them. It's not good for safety. It's not good for biodiversity. And we help them convert their plots of land. We also, in the forest, in the national park, we have almost 400 hectares of public land that is completely co-managed with people. So some are with youth volunteers that go and manage their plots of land every month, and some is with organizations from civil society, everything, ranging from companies to charities. They have X square meters, and this is co-management of a local forest, and it's also about spreading the word. We are co-deciding and co-planning whenever we convert unused plots of land, and we call everyone on board. And we have a grant project called Fund Adapt, whereby people from civil society are attributed grants for adaptation purposes. And we have very cool projects like urban forests sprouting up, and people working with local fishermen, for example. So here we just leave it up to the imagination of whoever wants to be eligible. But I think communication is also really important when we want participation. And when we speak about adaptation, and I think other mayors here will understand this very strongly, we have to be very careful. There are some popular projects, like, for example, when we're reconverting a river basin and creating a green corridor. That's very popular. And why do we need to communicate about adaptation? Well, because here people are just so attracted by the fact that there's a green corridor and accessibilities and biodiversity is back, that they don't understand that there's a very other important goal, which is minimizing the risk of floods. And so communication is important here, but communication is important for non-popular projects. For example, we are implementing in Cascais a whole network, underground network, for distributing recycled water, because it's stupid to use potable water to water green parks and to clean the streets. And we're totally dependent on one source of it. So if we know that there are droughts becoming more intense, we have to think ahead. But this is not on citizens' agenda. And it's a lot of money. And it's a lot of upheaval, because we will be, digging for a while. So it means we have to explain. We have to explain about things that are not on people's agenda. People are not worried about water scarcity, but local governors have to put this on the table, and that's not easy. That's why we need the science, and we need the participation and very, very clear communication. So there are some challenges regarding this action plan, not just regarding communication and participation. And some challenges have been put on the table, which is what to do about neighboring countries. We share coastlines, we share rivers, we share national parks, and sometimes we're not as good as other municipalities in cooperating outwards with neighbors. And so it has been mentioned here as well, different levels of governance, and sometimes for health issues, we're dependent on central government. And adaptation is very much about health issues, as you know. And there's one third challenge that I would like to put on the table, which is time. And this also links in with participation, because it takes time to regenerate a national park. It takes time to introduce nature-based solutions in rivers. and it takes time to do public tendering. And when we're involving the population, you have to be very clear about how long all this will take.
Excellent, Joanna. Very, very important points for all of us here. And I think I particularly like what you say about communication. What we find in our work also in Brussels is that adaptation is very difficult to understand in all its totality. So what we have tried to increasingly start talking about is preparedness to the impact. It's about resilience. It is about really making sure that our societal and economic foundation is protected from the increasing impacts of the changed climatic conditions, because it is not something that relates to the future. It's not something that can be left for next generation of policymakers. What we've seen in very clear evidence in the past months and years is that the impacts are very present and they do affect our everyday lives and livelihoods in all parts of Europe. So there's definitely a terminology, pedagogical aspect to all of this to further help our partners, our citizens, but also the different levels of administration understand the importance of action and investment into our resilience for the future to come. What I'm going to do now, using my kind of moderator privileges, is to do a short lightning round to all of you, reflecting on some of the elements that have come up in the previous conversations. And meanwhile, I'd like to invite the participants both online and those who have some from the panel perspective questions to each other to reflect on questions that we would benefit from addressing still during our session. But during the lightning round, and we'll go in the same order, I'd like you to give very brief reflections on 3 points. We spoke of the goals, importance of setting clear direction. And indeed, in Dubai, one of the key discussions is around the global goal for adaptation. But how can you, as policymakers, as decision makers, measure the impact? Because goal is only as meaningful as the progress you make towards it. Then secondly, can you reflect on some very good practical examples of empowerment? Where has it worked to empower your local authorities to connect with the national authorities and vice versa? What are the things that can make an individual into a champion of that very important multi-level governance and make it most functioning? And then lastly, and this is something that I think is a real preoccupation for all of us working on adaptation and climate risk preparedness, how can we beat defeatism in our conversations with the citizen, with the different interlocutors, businesses? How can we make sure that there is no layer of resignation, that people feel that change is still possible? And we'll start with Tanya. Over to you.
Thank you, Elina. And all these elements that you have pointed out are really very important when we talk about adaptation and when we take into consideration the important role of the local politicians, because in order to proceed and to progress in this policy and in order to protect our citizens and our businesses from the negative aspects of the climate change, we have to firstly show commitment and readiness to work together with all stakeholders and to try to be as much as possible clear to the citizens, because sometimes it is very difficult to get the citizens' attention when you cannot clearly define what is exactly going to happen, and on the second level, how to engage the citizens' involvement in all these endeavors. I think there is no written, clearly defined agenda that could fit each and every city. And therefore, it is very important to work very actively and with innovation on specific territories, because, for example, if some some models could be applied to my city based on the geographical criteria, based on the social and economical development. Maybe this model would not be applicable 100% for some other territory. But it is also something very important to work in connection with other partners, because when we are talking and with those that are very close to us, because climate change does not have limits, and there are no borders that could be defined in this direction. And when we have to decide, or when we have to focus on the measures that we have to put in our agenda, we have to, in my understanding, work very closely with academia, with people that are good communicators, and try to organize initiatives that will be really important for this transition period. And if we have to measure the impact, it is maybe good to see how our partners react. For example, I would like to give some example from what we are doing in my city, because we are trying to work very strongly for changing the mindset of our citizens and introducing new ways of thinking, which will affect our decisions to be more sustainable and to take into consideration the environmental care. I would like to mention two very important current projects that are with very strong international participation and that have direct impact on the global and green transition components. A few months we started a partnership project which is called Soteria, and it is aiming to elaborate solutions that will be tested in our regions through insurance and climate adaptations, which means that we are going and we are working with different insurance companies and try to design and test locally new models that will be related to addressing the climate challenges. And this project will advance innovative insurance solutions for climate change adaptation, and will test new insurance products and services, and that reward proactive preventive measures while seeking to increase coverage through co-designed solutions. And another project which is very practical for my city, and I think it was mentioned in Carcass, it is the project Mount Resilience, which will help our city to introduce sustainable green public infrastructure practices, and will provide to use raining waters, and also to introduce early warning and monitoring tools for risk management. And also we are very actively working for the establishment of transition team, which will be very instrumental for implementing our sustainable energy plans and achieving climate neutrality by 2030. Also, we are engaged in introducing electric public transport, and we are working a lot with citizens to introduce energy efficient measures for their multifamily buildings, which involves very much the social component in
Excellent. These are such beautiful examples of many of the dimensions that I addressed, also for the other panelists. Maybe in the interest of time, I could ask the remaining lightning round members to just reflect on one or the two things that you've heard and also on the measurement, empowerment, and beating defeatism, but not to spend more than a minute and a half for each one of you, so that we can get to the very important questions that we have already received on Slido. So with that, Antonio, over to you. 1.5 minutes, please.
Well, Estonian society collaboration is very important, and we are trying to transmit to our citizens the effort to be an example, to be leaders in sustainability from Valencia with Europe and working together. The region of Valencia and the city of Valencia have both been selected as a European mission. In addition, the city of Valencia has recently been chosen as one of the 10 mission level cities. And this next year, we have the honor and responsibility of being European fully capital. But you can see that you can imagine for us all this is common and so tough for region and with Europe. Answering the question in detail, the function for the city of Valencia, completely, in terms of urban sustainability, can be moved to the green infrastructure and urban biodiversity, climate mission, sustainable mobility and public space to recovery. I think this is very important for us. All tax and self-sustainable food and analysis and investments. And some centers of that we have done in recent years are, for example, 200 kilometers of bike lanes and bicycle lanes too. 150,000 square meter pedestrian lane in our city, and 30% reduction in DAC emissions. In addition, I have to say that Valencia is a city with a extraordinary green heritage that includes Turia, that is a green mountain river, and Albufera, a big lake, the second one in Spain. But also, we have numerous parks and gardens. From large city spaces, such as Viveros or Central Park, 200 of neighborhood parks that ensure every citizen has green space within 5 minutes of rainfall. I think this is a good commitment of the city with the green space and with our citizens. Currently, the city has 7.5 square meters of green areas per citizens, but the goal is to reach 10 meters by 2030. It's worth noting that the 70% of life operations is in green area connected to climate change within 5 minutes of the sun. This is more or less about 300 meters away. And to conclude, as I started, for us, this urban scale process is born from and developed through the citizenship. And it's in most cases, it's the way it's the way to talk is the green city. It's our mission as a government that is in the mission and from to work together to achieve this goal.
Thanks, Antonio. Excellent concrete examples of both measurement but also empowerment, how the inclusive approaches have really worked. Now we move very swiftly over to Åsa. Pick and choose some crisp elements that you like to reflect on, and then we get to the questions. After Joanna, of course. Go ahead, Åsa.
Of course, thank you. I will be quite brief, I hope. I think we need to talk more about the democratic layer in these issues, and especially when we see an increasing polarization in our communities. And it's these times of distrust among citizens and a feeling of decisions being made far away, maybe not have a sense of being listened to. I think it's more important than ever to recognize the role at the local and regional level. And I myself is obviously both local and regional, but also on the national and European level, I see the need for local politicians stepping up and taking the lead in the changes. And we are going to need all new solutions and innovations. Smart people come together, finding new solutions, sharing knowledge and know-how, smart solutions, thinking outside the famous box to solve our time's problems. And we have done it before so many times, and I'm convinced we will do it many times more. And this means that the way to get things done also might have to change. Sometimes democratic decisions take time, and they should in some ways. And in order to get people on board, it needs perseverance, dedication, and eyes on the goal. And at the same time, recognizing and encouraging the fact that there can be many different ways to reach the goal, simply because one size doesn't fit all. So I will close with the main issue, maybe when strong voices are heard that calls for rapid action and quick decisions, the risk is that neither the facts nor the people are on board. And with that said, democratically made decisions doesn't have to take forever either. So the balance here is important to uphold to address that layer of resignation that you were talking about. I'll pause there. Thank you.
Excellent, Åsa. Very important reflections. The interplay between demographics and politics should not be overlooked in any of our actions. There are those who say that we know what needs to be done, but we just don't know how to get re-elected if we do so. With those wise words, over to you, Joanna, to reflect a little bit on what you've heard and what I put as questions.
Thank you, everyone. Yes, so I'll reflect on goals and then the defeatism. Goals are difficult, and I know this is one of the main debates here at the COP in Dubai. Heat waves, we want less heat waves, but we will not have less heat waves. So we want less people to suffer or die from heat waves. And this has to be measured somehow, but I don't think we should measure that kind of indicator. We should measure what is done, how many actions are done upstream to avoid heat waves. And here it means, in our case in Cascais, it means communicating, having good science to know ahead that there will be a heat wave, and then communicating in a very precise way to the people that we know are fragile and vulnerable. Sea level rise. Yeah, we've been measuring sea level rise since 1885. We have like the oldest tidal sea gorge in Europe, but so what? We know sea level is rising. We need more than that. We need to know what kind of impacts will be avoided. In an ideal situation, I would love to have like all the data together, all the scenario capacity together, just to know what could be avoided if we introduce this or that measure, how much it would cost and what would be avoided. This would be the best way of communicating to everyone. So going back to defeatism, how to avoid defeatism, and I would like to touch on what Azza just said. Environmental policies are no longer just environmental policies. They are much more than that. They're social policies at the end of the day and economic policies at the end of the day. When a municipality like ours introduces a free public bus transport, it's not about mitigation. It's about social cohesion. If we do what we're doing in the national park, it's not just about biodiversity, it's about safety and economic dynamic with nature. So if all this is well communicated, and if there is really transparent accountability, participation, then it also, at the end of the day, helps to dilute the polarisms that were just mentioned, dilute extremisms, because it entails trust and it entails empathy, and it sort of closes the gap between citizens and decision makers.
Excellent. I think we could go so much deeper, and I have so many thoughts I would like to bounce off with you, but now it's really time for the participant questions. And we will ask for the Slido to be displayed. If I may have the Slido, and then we will try and manage in the 7 minutes to kind of reflect on some of the key questions that have been put forward by the online participants. I know there's already one question on innovation, the role of technologies and pioneering solutions. Maybe I could ask Antonio from Valencia to offer his reflections on what role do you see for innovative technologies in the EU approach to climate change adaptation? Valencia, while we wait for the Slido to come on screen.
Yes, well, I think it's very important. For us, for example, we were the first city in Europe that implements the smart city platform following the UE standard, and that thing that we did maybe could one of the most important things that we have done in the last years. Why? Because the technology provides information. With this information, we can have the possibility to know really what things are happening in our city. And with this information, we can fix or implement different local policies to try to improve the things that we are affecting. For the reason, the IoT, the IE and this kind of new technologies can help us to obtain the goal fastly. And I think all the programs that the European Union we have implemented following these lines are trying to connect innovation with sustainability, because this will help us to grow up fastly and improve our adaptation and mitigation policies.
Excellent, Antonio. And I think the role of research and innovation cannot be overstated in this context. There are so many unknowns still in the work we do, and if we don't explore the unexplored territories, we may miss out on something. Now, there's a lot of Slido questions, but we only have 4 minutes of time. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask all the ladies in the panel to still reflect a little bit on one reoccurring question, which is very much about how can we take the missions approach, the approach of learning more, doing more, raising awareness, and replicating? How can we deploy that and learn from the pioneering missions approach to the context of international cooperation? And I think that's a very good question to conclude on, considering the venue of the COP28. So replicability beyond borders. Over to you, and maybe we start in a little bit of a reverse order. Joanna, who's always been going last, maybe I can ask you to go first, then Åsa, and concluding with Tanya. Please, over to you.
I think replicability is essential, and it will happen more fluidly once the win-win gains are demonstrated. So any kind of adaptation measure, it has double win or triple win gains in every respect. For example, we're reforesting our seabeds. This seems not so relevant for adaptation, but of course it is, because when winter surges come on, we will have our coast better protected. This is good for the restaurants that are working on the coastline. It's good for biodiversity, because new algae attracts new fish. It's good for capturing CO2. It's good for producing oxygen. And it's not so expensive. It took us a while to find the right formula, which algae, which kind of plantation method, but we've sorted it out. We can share, and it's win-win-win-win. So this is just an example of how replicability can be enhanced, demonstrating the gains.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Åsa?
Well, I could second that what Joanna just said, because I think it's about finding the best practices in different areas, because they are, well, above all the societies. I think we need to find best practices and then copy and use them in our own cities or regions, because with small adaptations, you can use many of the new sciences and the new technologies and so on. And not everything has to be super expensive either, because at the end of the day, this also comes down to funding. And we don't have that time to talk about the funding in the remaining 2 minutes. So that would be another issue for later. But this is an important thing, because all the municipalities, the local and regional levels, are also directly responsible for the regions and their citizens, and what have you done with our tax money. So I think finding best practices and enhancing them and making them work in your own context is crucial and key here. Thank you.
Excellent. Then we will get some final words from Tanya, and then I'll do 10 seconds conclusion. So Tanya, a task of being very succinct, please.
think that we should very much rely nowadays on mission-oriented policy, and I think the cities and regions across Europe, but not only, are the perfect platform to start piloting different projects and initiatives, to experiment, and even to take sometimes the risk to make mistakes and to learn from the experience that could be shared with other partners. And in this way, working together with all partners, engaging all resources in order to have more systemic and comprehensive approach, I think we can bring real products and make us impact on our citizens in this transition and adaptation endeavor. And I think the crucial role that cities and regions will have in this endeavor will be deployed, and I believe that in our responsibilities as politicians, we will make so that all the resources will be focused and integrated for achieving this goal.
Thank you, Tanya. Thanks very much. So taking risks, experimenting, demonstrating the value added through quick wins, and inspiring each other to go the extra mile and to take examples to the scale. Fantastic panel. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all the online participants. I wish you all a very, very good day. And to those in Dubai, bon courage. The road is incremental, but every step matters. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye now.